"Help me." She didn't scream when she lost the baby. She just lay there on the cold marble floor of Suite 1401, her emerald gown soaked through, her hand pressed against her stomach, and she called her husband's name once, twice, 3 times into the silence of a locked room. No answer, just the muffled bass of a gala 1 floor below and the sound of her own breathing getting shallow. Alexander had taken the keycard with him. 2 years later, Cynthia Oe Mensah walked into that same hotel, and this time the room went silent for her. The gold-plated doors of the Grand Astoria ballroom parted like they were afraid to slow her down. She wore a floor-length emerald silk gown, the same color, different woman. And beside her walked a man in a black bespoke suit, collar open, no tie, one hand resting at the small of her back, like he had placed a claim on something he intended to keep. His name was Kirill. Most people in Moscow had never seen his face. Every person in that room had felt the weight of his decisions. The music stopped, not because anyone told it to. It just stopped. Alexander stood at the center of the ballroom mid-toast, his arm around a woman in a gold dress, his champagne flute raised, his mouth already open with the beginning of a sentence about empire and legacy and foundations. He turned toward the doors like everyone else. And when he saw her, really saw her, the glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. No one moved to clean it up. "You left a debt unpaid, Alexander," Kirill said into the silence. His voice was low. He didn't need a microphone. The room just carried it. His hand moved from Cynthia's back to her waist, slow and deliberate, the way a man moves when he wants the message to land with weight. "And I've come to help my wife collect." Alexander's mouth was still open. Cynthia looked at him the way you look at a hairline crack in a wall you're about to demolish, not with hatred, with precision. She smiled, and then she let the black folder in her hand drop onto the nearest table, open so the documents inside slid out just far enough for the room to see the logo stamped at the top of every page. His company's logo, his signature at the bottom, and at the very top, 3 words that made 2 of his business partners immediately reach for their phone. Notice of acquisition. This is the story of how a woman who was left to bleed alone became the most dangerous person in the room. Not because she had a gun, because she had a pen and 2 years of patience. It started the night Alexander chose the deal over the baby. Cynthia had been 7 months pregnant, which was not something she wore lightly. She had adjusted her entire schedule around her body's demands, pushed back 3 client presentations, and still managed to finish the structural review for the Kremlin Tower restoration project 4 days early. That was the kind of woman she was. She did not slow down. She reorganized herself to keep moving. The gala at the Grand Astoria was all Alexander's event, a real estate showcase, black tie, the kind of evening where people smiled at each other and shook hands and made enormous promises that would unravel quietly over the following months. Cynthia had not wanted to come, but Alexander had insisted because she made him look grounded, he said. Stable, a man with a family. She knew what she was to him by then, a prop, an architectural feature in his personal presentation. She had just not yet decided what to do about it. The pain started during the second cocktail hour, a deep, pulling pressure that was not Braxton Hicks, nothing like the false contraction she had been tracking. This was different. Cynthia set her glass down on a passing tray, took a slow breath, and found Alexander near the windows, laughing at something a man in a silver tie had said. "I need to go upstairs," she said, quietly. "Something is wrong." Alexander's smile didn't move. He put his hand on her shoulder lightly, performatively. "You're fine. It's just nerves. Go sit down." Alexander, Cynthia. His voice dropped half a register, the kind of drop that meant they were in public and he needed her to cooperate. "I am 30 minutes from closing the Siberian Group deal." 30 minutes? Can you give me 30 minutes? She looked at him. He looked back at her. And somewhere in that exchange, She understood something she had been avoiding understanding for a long time. "Fine," she said. "Give me the key card." He gave her the key card. He turned back to his conversation. He did not look back at her. What happened in Suite 1401 inches the following 40 minutes was something Cynthia did not talk about afterward. Not because she couldn't find the words, because some things you do not narrate until you are ready to use them as evidence. She called the front desk. The line rang out. She called Alexander straight to voicemail. She called emergency services and unlocked the door herself, crawling to reach the card reader, her body doing things she had no vocabulary for. By the time the paramedics arrived, she was alone on the marble floor, her phone dead, the room ice cold from air conditioning no one had thought to adjust. The baby, her daughter, whom she had already named Anya in the quiet parts of her mind, did not survive. Alexander came upstairs 45 minutes later. He came because one of the hotel staff had found him, not because he had checked, not because something in his body had told him to move. He came because someone else had come to find him. And even then, the first thing he said when he stepped through the door was, "Why didn't you call me?" Cynthia looked at him from the hospital stretcher that had materialized from somewhere. She did not say anything. She filed that sentence away, every word of it. She was transferred to a private clinic that night. She did not know who had arranged it. She assumed it was Alexander. She was wrong. The clinic was quiet and very clean. The nurses were efficient and asked no unnecessary questions. On the third day, a man came to sit in the chair beside her bed. He knocked first, which she registered because nobody had knocked on a door for her in a long time. Kirill was not what she expected. She had not expected anything because she didn't know who he was. He looked like a man who had been somewhere very cold for a very long time and had learned to generate his own heat. He wore a dark suit, no jewelry. His hands were folded in his lap, and he sat with the stillness of someone who had made peace with waiting. "You don't know me," he said. "No," she said. "My name is Kirill. Your surgery was paid through my foundation." A pause. "I don't need you to thank me." Cynthia's eyes narrowed by 2 degrees. "Then what do you need?" He almost smiled. "Nothing yet. I need you to get better." "Why?" The silence before his answer was not a performance. It was the kind of silence that comes when someone is choosing between 2 true things and is not sure which one to say first. "Because 6 years ago," he said, "you were the restoration architect on the Hermitage Heritage Project. And during that project, you anonymously reported a structural safety violation that the site manager had buried. The building was my mother's home. She was inside when you made that call." Cynthia stared at him. She didn't know who made the report. "I found out 6 months later," Kirill said. "I've known your name since then." She let that sit. She was very tired and her chest felt like someone had hollowed it out. "You've been watching me for 6 years. "Watching is too heavy a word," he said with the faintest trace of something that might have been a dry sense of humor under about 15 layers of composure. "Let's say I've been paying attention." She didn't say anything for a long time. Outside the window, Moscow did what Moscow always did. Moved, glittered, insisted on itself. "My daughter didn't make it," she said finally. Not because he didn't know, because she needed to say it to someone who would receive it without flinching. He didn't flinch. "I know. Her father didn't come. I know that too." "Then you know I have nothing right now." "No," Kirill said quietly. "I know you have everything. You just haven't decided what to do with it yet." Cynthia turned to look at him fully for the first time. "When you're ready," he said, standing. "I have a project that needs the best restoration architect in Eastern Europe, and she needs to disappear for 2 years first." He left his card on the bedside table. He walked out without waiting for an answer. The door closed with barely a sound. She picked up the card on the 4th day when she could sit up without help. She didn't call him for 3 weeks. When she did, all she said was, "Tell me about the project." His response 2 seconds later, "The project is called Jade Horizon, but first, you need a new name." The 2 years that followed were not a montage. They were work, brutal, structural, the kind of rebuilding that happens in increments so small you don't notice them until one morning you catch your reflection and realize you are holding yourself differently. Cynthia became Nyla Asante, ghost architect. She spent 4 months in Vladivostok under a master preservationist who made her relearn load distribution by studying collapsed bridges. She spent another 3 months in a legal and financial forensics program that Kirill had quietly arranged through a university connection who asked no questions. She took everything she knew about how buildings were taken apart and learned to apply it to corporations. She learned how shell companies hid assets. She learned how to audit a financial structure and find the weight-bearing walls. She learned that Alexander's empire, which looked enormous from the outside, was almost entirely hollow. During those 2 years, Kirill appeared at specific intervals that were never arbitrary. He appeared when she had a question he could answer. He appeared when a door needed to open, and occasionally he appeared with food, placed it on her desk without ceremony, and sat across from her while she worked, reading something himself. Not speaking, not needing to. The first time she found that comfortable, she got up and moved to a different room. The second time it happened, she stayed. The dinner at the Bolshoi private room was the first time the silence between them had actually been tested. They were 3 months into the Jade Horizon pre-production phase, and Kirill had called the dinner to review progress. But the progress review lasted 20 minutes. The rest of the evening was something else. "Why did you really save me?" Cynthia asked, setting down her chopsticks. "Not the building, story. The real answer." Kirill looked at her for a moment. "The building story is real. I know, but it's not all of it." Another one of those silences. She was getting better at waiting him out. "I've invested in a lot of projects," he said. "Finally, buildings, companies, assets, most of them return exactly what they're designed to return and nothing more." He looked at his glass. "I don't invest in projects anymore, Cynthia. I invest in people who survive. And I had watched you survive things that would have ended most people quietly without asking anyone for help for 6 years. When I saw what happened to you in that suite," he stopped. His jaw moved slightly. "I made a decision that night." "What decision?" "That no one was going to profit from what was done to you. Not Alexander. Not the woman he was with. Not a single person who stood in that ballroom while you were upstairs alone. The room was very quiet." "That's not an investment strategy," Cynthia said. "No," Kirill agreed. "It's not." She looked at him for a long time. Something shifted inside her chest. The first crack in the wall she'd been building around herself for 2 years. She picked her chopsticks back up. "I don't need to be protected," she said. "I know," he said. "That's not what I'm offering." She almost smiled. "Then what are you offering?" "A partner," he said simply, "for whatever comes next." She didn't answer, but she didn't move away from the table either. Alexander found the ghost architect 3 months later, or rather, he found the name Nyla Asante through a contact who had seen the preliminary renders for the Jade Horizon presentation and called Alexander to tell him that if he wanted to survive the Ural development collapse, he needed to hire whoever had designed those structures. He did not find out who Nyla Asante was. He assumed she was some emerging talent from Accra or Lagos. He assumed she would be grateful for his commission. He sent 3 emails. She accepted the meeting. The meeting took place in a glass-walled conference room at a neutral address. Cynthia sat behind a translucent screen, standard practice for a consultant protecting proprietary methodology, which was a reason Alexander accepted without question because he had never given her enough credit to question anything she did. She watched him through the screen. He was wearing a suit she didn't recognize. New money, new tailor, new watch, same terror behind the eyes. He had gained a little weight. He talked too fast. He said my portfolio 4 times in the first 10 minutes. The Ural properties have excellent bones, she said. Her voice filtered through a sound modifier, low, neutral. But you've been loading structural weight onto foundations that were never designed for it, financially and literally. Your last 3 acquisitions were bought with paper, and the paper is getting thin. Alexander shifted. That's being addressed. What I need from you is, tell me about the Jade Horizon competing bid, she said. He stiffened. That's not what this meeting is about. No, she said, but it's what I'm most interested in, because whoever wins that contract wins Moscow's architectural identity for the next decade. And I understand your company put in a bid. We did. Walk me through your approach. He did. He was very confident. He used her work, her original concept documents, which he had accessed through her old firm server 2 years ago, and repurposed without realizing it. She sat behind the screen and listened to him explain her own vision back to her and took very detailed notes. After the meeting, she sat in the empty room for 11 minutes. Then she called Kirill. He plagiarized my Jade Horizon concept, she said. He's had it for 2 years. He never knew it was mine. I know, Kirill said. You knew. I found out 6 weeks ago. I was waiting for you to find out naturally. Why? Because I needed you to feel it, he said. Not read about it. Feel it. She exhaled. Kirill. Yes. Accelerate the timeline. A pause then. Already done. The complication arrived in the form of Svetlana, which was, Cynthia noted privately, an extremely expensive name for a woman who had been doing discount-level work. Svetlana was sharp, well-dressed, and very good at performing loyalty. She had also, it turned out, been on Kirill's payroll before she'd ever laid eyes on Alexander. When Cynthia found out, she stood in Kirill's office and looked at him with an expression that he would later describe to himself only as the most frightening thing he had encountered in 15 years of professional life. You planted her, Cynthia said. Yes, before you found me, before I found you. How long have you been planning this? Kirill sat back in his chair. He had the grace not to look away long enough to know it needed you to be real. She turned to the window. Moscow spread out below them like a circuit board. All geometry and light. You used me. No, he said, and the word landed differently than she expected. Too immediate, too unguarded for a man who calculated everything. I built around you. There is a difference. Every piece I put in place was designed to give you options, not obligations. You could have walked away at any point, could I? Yes, he said, and I would have let Svetlana finish the job another way. It would have been cleaner. It would have been over faster. But he stopped. But what? He was quiet for a moment. But it wouldn't have been yours. She stood at the window for a long time. If you ever manage information about me without telling me again, she said finally, I will walk. No conversation. No second chance. Understood. Say it clearly. I will not manage information about you without telling you ever again. She turned back from the window. Good. She picked up her tablet from his desk. Now Svetlana is about to discover I'm alive. What's her next move? Kirill almost smiled. This time, she noticed it was almost a real one. She contacts Alexander. She tells him the ghost architect is you. He panics. He tries to pull the Jade Horizon bid and report you for corporate espionage to create noise and delay the acquisition timeline. And we let him file the report. Cynthia blinked. We let him because the report requires him to submit all documentation of his competing bid, which includes the documents he stole from you, which are time-stamped on your original server logs, which I have preserved. Kirill folded his hands on the desk. He will walk into the investigation holding the evidence of his own plagiarism. Cynthia was quiet. Then she laughed. It was a short sound, involuntary, real. The kind of laugh that comes out of a person when something is so perfectly constructed they can't help it. Kirill looked at her. Sorry, she said, composing herself. That's actually elegant. Thank you. I still might have preferred to know about Svetlana earlier, noted. They looked at each other across the desk. Something had shifted in the room. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just different. Warmer somehow, as if a window had opened somewhere. You laughed, Kirill said. I did. It's the first time I've heard that. She held his gaze for a moment. Don't make it a big thing. I'm not, he said in a tone that made it very clear that it was to him a significant thing. She looked back down at her tablet, but she did not move away from the desk. The corporate espionage report went exactly as Kirill predicted, which should not have surprised her, but did anyway. Alexander filed the claim with aggressive confidence, the confidence of a man who had never been caught before and had therefore concluded he was uncatchable. The investigation opened. The documentation was submitted. The timestamp forensics took 11 days. On the 12th day, the investigator called Alexander's legal team. Cynthia was in Kirill's car when she found out. They were in transit to a pre-board meeting, and Kirill's assistant sent a single-line message. The report has been classified as self-implicating. Cynthia read it twice. She looked out the window at the Moskva River sliding past in the early morning light. He reported me, she said, quietly, for stealing from myself. Yes. How is he not in custody? Plagiarism is civil, not criminal, Kirill said. The criminal element comes later in the board meeting. The security footage. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. You've had that footage for 2 years. Yes. And you waited. Timing. Kirill said in a tone that contained somewhere underneath it an apology. 2 years. Kirill, I know. His hand moved to the seat between them, not touching her, just placing itself there. I'm sorry. She looked at his hand. She looked at him. He met her eyes and didn't dress the apology up with anything. Just let it sit there plain. She placed her hand over his once brief. Then she looked back out the window. Let's finish this, she said. The Jade Horizon board meeting was held on a Tuesday. Alexander had been told it was a final review of the competing bids. He arrived in his best suit, Italian custom, too shiny under fluorescent light, with 2 lawyers, and the expression of a man who believed he was about to be handed something. The boardroom was glass-walled, high floor with a view of Moscow that on any other day would have been beautiful. Around the table sat 7 people, 3 Jade Horizon Foundation executives, 1 city planning representative, 1 investment liaison, and at the far end, Cynthia and Kirill. Alexander sat down across from the executives. He did not look at the far end of the table immediately. When he did, the color left his face in a way that was slow and total, like water draining from a bathtub. Hello, Alexander, Cynthia said. He opened his mouth, closed it. One of his lawyers leaned toward him and whispered something. This is a conflict of interest, Alexander said. His voice was doing something strange, thin at the edges, like paper held too close to flame. She cannot be in this meeting. She filed a project under a false identity. The identity was a professional alias, the foundation's lead executive said calmly. Fully registered, fully legal. Naila Asante is Cynthia Owe-Mensah. Both names are documented in our contractor records. She slid a folder across the table, as is the complete audit trail of the Jade Horizon Concepts' origin. Alexander stared at the folder. Your competing bid, Kirill said, was built on structural concepts taken from a server belonging to your former wife's architectural consultancy. The original documents are dated 14 months before your bid was submitted. The forensic timestamp audit conducted by an independent firm confirms origin. He placed a drive on the table. This is a copy. The original has already been filed with the Intellectual Property Commission. One of Alexander's lawyers was typing rapidly. The other had gone very still. Furthermore, Kirill continued in the same measured tone he might use to discuss weather patterns. The shell companies used to finance your last 4 property acquisitions: Orion Holdings, Volga Capital, Caspian Real Estate Partners, and the Ridgeway Fund were all audited over the last 11 months by a foundation registered under Jade Horizon's legal structure. As of 3 weeks ago, all 4 entities were absorbed into that foundation through a series of debt acquisition agreements that your registered legal representative signed on your behalf. He looked at Alexander without any particular expression. You signed the final authorization yourself. It was attached to what you believed was a refinancing agreement. The room was very quiet. You can't. Alexander looked at Cynthia, and for the first time the mask of expensive confidence came entirely off. What was underneath it was something she had always known was there and had spent too long trying not to see. Small, scared, hollow. Cynthia, listen to me. Whatever he has told you, he didn't tell me. Anything I didn't already know, she said. Her voice was even. She did not raise it. She never needed to. I built this case. Kirill opened doors. I walked through them. Every decision was mine. We were married. We built something together. You built your portfolio with my concepts, my contacts, and my reputation, she said. And when I needed you, you locked the door and went to a party. She paused. Not for effect, because she needed one breath before she said the next part. Anya would have been 2 years old this April. The name landed in the room like a stone into still water. Every ripple was visible. Alexander said nothing. The hospital security footage from the Grand Astoria, Kirill said quietly. From the night of March 14th, 2 years ago, including the suite corridor, the elevator bank, and the ballroom entrance, has been preserved and transferred to the prosecutor's office, along with a formal neglect and endangerment report. He looked at Alexander with an expression that was not cruel, simply final. You should speak with your lawyers. Alexander looked at his lawyers. His lawyers looked at the table. The Jade Horizon contract, the foundation executive said, sliding the final document across the table toward Cynthia, has been awarded to the original architect of record. Cynthia looked at the document. She picked up a pen, her own pen, the one she had carried since architecture school. A small, deliberate gesture that no one except Kirill would understand. And she signed her name, both of them, Nyla and Cynthia. She set the pen down. Alexander stood up. He stood up because he had nothing left to do in the room and because sitting felt worse. He looked at her one more time. The way people look at something they had and didn't understand the value of until it was irreversibly gone. Then he walked out. His lawyers followed. The door closed. The room exhaled. One of the foundation executives began gathering documents. Someone across the table made a quiet professional comment about proceeding to the implementation schedule. The city planning representative asked about the Ural site walkthrough. Kirill said nothing. He was watching Cynthia. She sat with both hands flat on the table and her eyes on the view. Moscow enormous and indifferent and brilliant, doing what cities do, which is continue. Are you all right? He said low enough that only she could hear it. She thought about it. The honest version of the answer took a moment to surface. I thought I'd feel bigger, she said finally. You will, he said. It takes time. The weight leaves slowly. She looked at him. How do you know? Because I've watched it happen to you for 2 years, he said. And you're lighter than you were this morning. She studied him. Kirill, who had never once needed the room to look at him to know he was its most powerful person. Kirill, who had sat beside her hospital bed and not once flinched, who had placed food on her desk and asked nothing, who had built the scaffolding of everything that just happened and then stepped back so she could walk to the center of it herself. You could have done this without me, she said. Yes, but you didn't. No. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Not the calculated silence, the real one. Because your daughter deserved to have her mother be the one who did this. Not me. Not a proxy. You. His voice didn't change in pitch or tone, but something in it was different. Open in the way that only happens when someone has decided to stop protecting a thing. And because I didn't want to do it without you. She felt the wall inside her chest shift. Not collapse, not crumble, just move like a door on a hinge opening a few degrees. I don't trust easily, she said. I know. I'm going to need you to be patient, Cynthia, he said very quietly. I've been paying attention to you for 6 years. I think I've demonstrated patience. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She laughed again, soft, real, the kind that leaves a person a little breathless. The Foundation executive looked up from her documents, looked away, suppressed a smile. 3 months later, Cynthia stood at the opening of the Anya Foundation for Women in Architecture. Named with one word, the name she had never stopped carrying, now carved in stone at the entrance of a building she had restored herself from a derelict Volga heritage structure into something that was half clinic, half studio, half library. 3 halves, because she had never been good at doing things in conventional proportions. The evening was quiet, invited guests only, no press, no gala, no champagne towers. Kirill arrived last, which she had told him not to do because it was theatrical, and he had said he would try not to be late and had then arrived last. "You're late?" she said. "I had something to arrange." Kirill. He held out a key. She looked at it. An actual key. Physical, old-fashioned, attached to a small tag. She read the tag, read it again. "The Grand Astoria Ballroom," she said. "Purchased this morning. Full deed transfer." She stared at him. "You bought the Grand Astoria Ballroom, the ballroom and the floor below it," he said with the air of someone clarifying a minor administrative detail. "I thought your foundation might want a second campus, with better acoustics." "Kirill, you can rename it anything you want," he said. "Or nothing. I just thought the place where you were humiliated should become something you own." The key was cold in her palm. She closed her fingers around it. "This is excessive," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "It's also—" She stopped. The word that came next was not one she had planned to say tonight, maybe ever, but it came anyway because some things don't wait for permission. Kind. It's incredibly kind. Kirill looked at her. His face, which operated in the narrow range between composed and more composed, did something small and involuntary. A shift, a warmth, a thing you would miss if you weren't looking. She was looking. "I've been told I'm difficult to read," he said. "You are," she said, "but I've been doing restoration work for 15 years. I know how to look at something broken and find where the structure is still holding." She held his gaze. "You're not as opaque as you think." He was quiet for a moment. "What do you see?" "Someone who's been paying attention," she said, and gave him back his own words. The ones from the hospital room 2 years ago. For a long time, he said nothing. He didn't need to. She turned toward the foundation entrance where her team was waiting, where the first cohort of scholarship recipients would arrive in the morning, where her daughter's name was carved in granite above the door. "Come inside," she said. "I want to show you what I built." He walked beside her, half a step behind the way he always did, not behind, not leading, just close enough to matter. The door opened. Cynthia away. Minsa crossed the threshold of her own foundation in the city that had once watched her bleed, carrying the key to the room where they thought they had broken her. She had not been broken. She had just been waiting to build something worth walking into. Did Alexander get exactly what he deserved? Or was Cynthia too easy on him? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Drop a heart if you absolutely swooned when Kirill bought the hotel. If you love stories of power, sweet revenge, and epic romance, hit that like button and subscribe to the Afro-Russian Storyverse. Until next time, keep building your own empires.